James Heinz. James is speaking to us for the fourth time. I hope you take it as a compliment, James, that we have enjoyed your presentation so much that we have you coming back for yet again. Tonight, James is going to talk about the third man on the monument, the life of Howard Cushing, the forgotten Cushing. So, James, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I hope everyone can hear me. The reason you are seeing a close-up of my face is because if I don't hold my computer very close to my mouth, the sound does not transmit. If anyone is
Jim, I just muted you by accident. So I muted everybody, but so you have to unmute yourself. There you go. Thank you.
Now.
Okay.
If you can't hear or see me, shake your head no from side to side. All right, I'll take that as a yes. I'm holding the computer very close to my face because otherwise the sound wouldn't be loud enough for you. So anyways, I'll get started. Tonight's presentation is Third Man on the Monument, The Life of Howard Bass Cushing, the Forgotten Cushing. There we go. When we think of the Cushings, we tend to think of Alonzo and his Medal of Honor. Or maybe William Barker Cushing, who I could present to you at another time. This was a guy who made Rambo look like a Girl Scout. And this place, Cushing Memorial Park in Delafield, between Milwaukee and Madison. But we forget the third man on the monument, Howard Cushing, and this is his story. There are unexpected connections. Alonzo and William were actually born in Milwaukee County. Howard and Alonzo served in the same unit and are connected to Milwaukee High School. What the Cushing brothers have in common with the Marx brothers, and how Howard is connected to Tarzan of the Apes, the first atomic bomb, a 2012 movie, how he inspired Carl Sagan, modern science fiction, and the troops in Vietnam. So this is the Cushing family history. The father, Milton Cushing, is born in 1800 in Fredonia, New York. He marries a woman. They have 4 children. Everybody dies young. Marries Mary Barker Smith in 1836. They moved to Milwaukee in 1837. They moved to Delafield, Namabin Township in 1839. They'll move to Chicago in 1844. And Milton will die in 1847 and is buried in Fredonia. This is Cushing's mother, Mary Barker Smith Cushing. And the reason everybody he's dying is because there's a family history of tuberculosis. Milton Cushing had it senior. He apparently passed it on to his first wife and all their children. They all died of it. He will pass it on to 5 of his 7 children by his second wife, 4 of whom would die by it, and 1 of whom had it when he was killed. These are the Cushing children by the second wife, Mary Barker Smith. Milton B. Cushing Jr., Howard Cushing, born in Milwaukee. Walter Cushing, born in Milwaukee, died in infancy. Alonzo Cushing and William Barker Cushing, born in Delafield. Mary Rachel Cushing died in infancy, and Mary Isabel Cushing, born in Chicago. Mary and Walter will die of childhood tuberculosis. The Cushing family moves to Milwaukee in 1838. This is a representation of what the city would have looked like at the time. It's much smaller. Again, another representation. It's divided into 3 towns. On the right side of the picture, the lower picture is a man, Solomon Juneau, who's considered the city's founder. The man above him in the upper right corner is Byron Kilbourne. He founded the rival settlement of Kilburn Town, and then to the far left of the picture, a man named Samuel Walker founded what's called Walker's Point at the time, which is now the near south side of Milwaukee. And the 2 towns are rival. There's no more than 800 people, but they're divided by the river into 2 hostile camps, whose differences were always apparently on the point of breaking out into actual violence. There's a great rivalry between Juneau Town, east side of the river downtown, and Kilburn Town, west side of the Milwaukee, most due to the actions of Byron Kilbourne, who's been trying to isolate Juneau Town to make it more dependent on Kilburn Town. And Howard Bass Cushing is born in Milwaukee on August 22nd, 1838. It's hot, mosquito-infested environment. Milwaukee was described as a forlorn waste of swamps and hills that looked like it would successfully defy the efforts of transformation, which indicates, in the opinion of many people, that nothing much has changed. Mrs. Cushing can't stand the tension between the two sides. It's hot. The mosquitoes apparently were terrible, and there's constant squabbling over the little river. So they moved to Delafield in 1839. This stone marks the birthplace of Alonzo and William. And actually, they were all born in Milwaukee County, because at that time, Waukesha County does not exist. It's part of Milwaukee County. The first Milwaukee County political convention was held in 1838 in the city of Waukesha. In the fall of 1843, they moved to Milwaukee, where Milton secured a position as a clerk with the county boards of supervisors. Then, for some reason, they returned to Chicago in the spring of 1844. The Cushings do not sell all of their Delafield farm. Mary purchased back from the family who bought the farm a plot of land 6 feet by 4 feet for a fee of $10. That plot is the grave of her son Walter, who died, was born in 1839 in Milwaukee and died in infancy and was buried in Delafield. And the Milwaukee Bridge Wars may be the reason they left. In 1840, the Wisconsin territorial legislature ordered the construction of a bridge across the Milwaukee River at what is now Juneau Avenue. 1845, the West Siders held a meeting and said the bridge had become an insupportable nuisance. They then took down their half of the bridge, collapsing it. Angry East Siders gathered weapons, including an old cannon, loaded only with clock weights. They rolled it up to the east side of the river and pointed at Kilburn's home, but held their fire when they learned that Kilburn's young daughter had just died. The next few weeks were tense. Both sides attack each other. More bridges were destroyed by mobs. Finally, apparently, I'm guessing the whiskey supply runs out and everybody sobers up. And finally, on the 31st of January, 1846, the city of Milwaukee was formed. Well, Milton Cushing decides to vacation in Vicksburg, Mississippi, because a common treatment for TB was to move to a warmer climate. Milton's sister's son, Lawrence Houghton, lives in Vicksburg. Milton takes a steamboat from Cassville to Vicksburg. And when attempting to return to his family, he will die in Gallipolis, Ohio on April 22nd, 1847. And Mary will bring Milton Sr. home to Fredonia and bury him there. This is the Cushing home in Fredonia. They will move there in the summer of 1847. The house is still standing. And Mary opens a private primary school. She teaches many of the young children of the community. She saves the family the money it would have cost them to go to another school and guarantees her academic proficiency, but it is not a profitable occupation. For months, they lived on nothing more than pudding and molasses. They're a close family. All of them are very different. Milton and Howard played together and were schooled together. Howard was called Howie or How. Milton is described as phlegmatic. Howard is self-sufficient. Alonzo as earnest and dutiful, and Will as irrepressible, and they sort of overshadow their sister Mary Isabel. Howard will get up as a printer's devil or an apprentice at the Fredonia Censor newspaper. We can see its headquarters here on the left. And he was sort of different. Seems to have been very independent, but he already had TB. He learns his trade. He goes to Boston, and then he has to return back to Fredonia to recover from his TB. He was a quiet man, the most independent of the boys, much given to sitting deep in thought while the others around him talked. He had the fine, clear Cushing eyes, was an excellent shot, and a brave and hardy soldier. This is what a print shop of the day would have looked like. He moves to Chicago sometime after July 1859 because there's simply more work in that city. The family has connections or friends from when they lived there, and they can help him get started on a new life. Gets a typesetting job with the Farmers Advocate newspaper. This is a example of the newspaper. And he makes periodic trips home. He has TB. The older he grows, the more symptoms become evident. He returned to Chicago from Fredonia in the spring of 1861, just in time for the Civil War. He says he enlisted for 3 months, but no confirmation of this can be found. Supposedly, he raised a company from among the newspapermen of Chicago. They supposedly elected him captain, but for some reason, their services are not accepted by the Illinois state authorities, and so he goes back to work. He will then join Taylor's battery, Company B of the Chicago Light Artillery, and that was organized before the Civil War, and is accepted into federal service in July of 1861. This is Ezra Taylor, the commander of Taylor's battery. This is their flag, which I found at the Chicago Public Library. This is what it looks like, the original Chicago Light Artillery Company B unit flag. This is the only known photo, supposedly, of Howard in uniform of the 1st Illinois Artillery. You can see the crossed cannons on his cap, and that's supposedly the only picture. However, in another book I found this picture. This was taken in Memphis in 1862, and I believe that's Howard sitting on the far left. Taylor's battery has seen action before Howard joined. They were with Grant at Belmont, and they were at Fort Donelson, and they occupied the extreme right and fought with scarcely any intermission for 3 days. And Battery B has a Wisconsin connection. These 5 gentlemen are from Kenosha, and they joined the battery. 2 sections or 4 guns of Battery B are armed with the 1843 6-pounder. 1 section, 2 guns, Battery B is armed with the 12-pound Napoleon guns. This is proper artillery placement. They deploy in 3 lines. First, you have the guns. Then you have the limber chests in the second line. Ammunition is run from those up to the guns. When they run out of ammunition, they wheel out of place. And then the caissons in the 3rd line to the back move up to supply the guns, while the limber chests are out resupplying. These are the gun positions viewed from the front. And this is the gun positions viewed from on top. And again, 6 and 7, I think, run the ammunition up to the guns, where 1, 2, 3, and 4 load and fire the piece. Howard does join Battery B in time for the Battle of Shiloh. The day before it's transferred to Sherman's division. They will go into the fight at 8 a.m. Ezra Taylor had been promoted, so the battery is commanded by Captain Samuel Barrett. This is his picture here. Battery B is positioned supposedly on the brow of a hill in the rear of Shiloh Church. This is the reconstructed Shiloh Church. And the Union is more or less caught by surprise. The approach and dawn assault achieved a strategic and tactical surprise. Sherman is the informal camp commander. He did not believe the Confederates had a major assault force nearby. He discounted the possibility of an attack from the south. And so Battery B responds. Barrett says the alarm was given at about 7:30 on Sunday morning. About 10 minutes thereafter, we commenced firing on the right of the log church, 100 yards in front of Sherman's headquarters. The enemy once charged on the battery, but were repulsed with great loss. This is a map of the battlefield. Sorry, it's a little blurry. This is the best I could do. I believe the battery was deployed essentially where the S is on the far left side of the picture. That would be to the right of Shiloh Church. You can see it's right in front of Sherman's headquarters. Ezra Taylor orders the battery to open fire, causes the enemy to take shelter in the timber, under cover which he advanced with 150 yards of the gun. They move their guns by hand to the front and pouring into them a shower of canister. This is the Battle of Shiloh on the morning of April 6th. You can see Hardee and Polk are attacking Sherman and McClernand's position. You can see the position of Shiloh Church, and the battery would have located right next to the church. Firing canister, they repulsed line after line of gray and butternut troops. Howard recalled repulsing the charge of 3 regiments of infantry supported by 3 batteries. About 9:15 a.m., the 77th Ohio, assigned to protect the battery, retreated, leaving the men and guns unsupported. They continued to fire without infantry support until 10 a.m., when Sherman ordered them back to the Purdy Road. They also duel with rebel artillery. The rebel fire typically overshot, the shells landing in the camps to the rear, although one caisson suffers a direct hit and explodes. And one of the guys who was a witness and wrote an account of the battery's activity is Battery B Kenosha boy, William T. Shepard. He's standing on the right in the left-hand picture, and then that's a close-up picture of him on the right. His description of the fight at their first position We see the Rebs on our left as if they were going to swallow us all up, and they were very near doing it. We repulsed them twice, and after a terrible fight of 2 or 3 hours, we were forced to fall back. This is that position. It's marked by a stone. They fight here from 7:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. This is the stone, Battery B, 1st Regiment of Light Artillery, Illinois. The Chicago gunners now see a large number of troops crossing the southern edge of Rhea Field, about 1,000 yards distance. They appear to be wearing blue uniforms, but they're actually from the 16th Alabama. The 16th was followed by Tennesseans who wore a uniform not to be mistaken, so they opened fire on them. The rebels then attacked Battery B, moving across Rhea Field. After a heavy volley, they dash across the ravine and right up the hill at us, but they break under the vicious blast of canister and scramble back to the creek. Sherman himself will give orders to Battery B. I was determined, Shiloh so important that I remained by it, and we did hold these positions until about 10, when the enemy got his artillery to the rear of our left flank. 2 regiments had already disappeared, and I therefore gave directions for Taylor's battery to fall back as far as the Purdy and Hamburg Road. Again, here's a diagram of the battle. You can see the Hamburg-Purdy Road just under the word Sherman to the left-hand side of the picture. And so that's where the battery may have fallen back to. You can see a couple of little artillery positions just to the right of the N in Sherman, and that probably is Battery B. This is the marker at their position, their second position. They will fight here from 11 to 2. Basically, they will fight until they run out of ammunition. The Confederate shells burst over and around us, killing and wounding many of our horses and some of our men. William Shepard's description is, this is where the artillery duel occurred, and of all the hot places in our experience, I think we may say that was the hottest. When you get 2 batteries face to face and work them together, it means business and nothing else. I don't recollect in my own mind how long it lasted. It was almost impossible for any living thing to stand there very long. So then Taylor will order the battery to withdraw. After 5 hours of hard fighting, having 1 man killed and several wounded, I instructed them to retire out of range and get a new ammunition supply. And so here we have the final phase of the battle of day 1. You see Sherman and his troops are retreating across the Hamburg-Purdy Road, going northbound, and Battery B will go with them. The Cushing battery suffers a loss at the Battle of Shiloh. Not far from Howard's guns, his first cousin, Private Theodore Tipper of the 40th Illinois, will be killed. And this is where Battery B camps for the night on the night in question. Howard remembers it somewhat differently than the official report. So of course he was writing years later. He says they fought for 2 hours at the Purdy Road. They retired to replenish its ammo. Howard says they fought at Shiloh Church for 3 hours and then at the Purdy Road for 6 hours. And he also reported fighting on the 2nd day at Shiloh. William T. Shepard has trouble remembering it too. I cannot describe the fury of the engagement during the last 2 days and very much doubt the ability of anyone to do so. To say it was terrible would be a very tame description of the bloody conflict. I despair of giving you any better or more definite idea of the fight. The only true idea of this horrible fight could be gained by the sight of the dead and wounded soldiers by the hundreds side by side. So, after the Battle of Shiloh, Battery B will accompany Sherman to the Chickasaw Bayou. 3 Union divisions disembark on the Yazoo River. They're trying to approach Vicksburg from the northeast. They push forward through swamps toward the Walnut Hills. They attempt to storm the hills on December 29th. Sherman ordered a frontal assault, which is repulsed with heavy casualties. This is a diagram of the battle. You can see the Union forces are trying to fight their way out of a swamp, going uphill along these bluffs, and they will be forced back. These are the bluffs at Chickasaw Bayou. Those obviously will be very difficult to scale under enemy fire. So Sherman will withdraw. Battery B member reported that it was 6 long and weary days and nights of incessant rain and mud everywhere. across the miserable Chickasaw Bayou in the face of the enemy. Battery B will then go to Fort Hindman, the Arkansas post. This is because McClernand is hoping for military glory and subsequent political gain. This isn't what Grant wants him to do, but at that point, the Union command structure is not completely clarified. McClernand is an ambitious politician who is very good at recruiting people, and Grant knows that Sherman doesn't want him overruled or relieved at this time. So basically, McClernand gets to order Sherman to send 33,000 men up the river to Arkansas Post. So these are Union combined operations against Fort Hindman. You can see Fort Hindman in the center left. There are Union gunboats in the river, and then there's Sherman's forces to the north. So Sherman says Barrett's Battery Company B was in the open space in the interval between Stewart's and Steele's divisions. So you can see Stewart and Steele on the left-hand side of the picture. Not exactly sure where they were, probably about where it says Blair. And Arkansas Post will surrender. About 5,500 Confederates will surrender. It does eliminate one more impediment to Union shipping on the Mississippi. Grant is furious at McClernand's diversion from his overall campaign strategy, orders him back to the Mississippi, and disbands his army and assumes personal command of the Vicksburg campaign. This is the Vicksburg campaign. We won't go into this too much. As we know from the story of the Civil War, on the upper left corner, Grant starts out, moves down opposite Vicksburg, crosses it at Grand Gulf, and then marches away from it, marches to Jackson, Mississippi, where he destroys critical railroad bridges and then turns around and moves back west towards Vicksburg. The Battery B will join him on the way back to Vicksburg from Jackson. They will fight at the Battle of Champions Hill. 7 a.m. that day, Pemberton has a 3-mile-long defensive line along a crest of a ridge. And Battery B will fight there. Barrett reports, we were in position on the left of the line of battle, engaged in action at or near Champions Hill. It says, he sort of contradicts himself. He says, we were in position and engaged in action, but then he says, but we were not brought into action, so I'm not quite sure. These are his two commanding officers, General Blair and General Smith. This is the Battle of Champions Hill, and the battery would have been employed towards the bottom center of the page, apparently under A.J. Smith. So Grant will move on to the Big Black River. Battery B did not fight there, but they do cross the river on the pontoon bridge indicated on the map. And this is that pontoon bridge. And the rebels will retreat to Vicksburg. Large masses of Union troops are on the march. And finally, they are able to surround the city. Johnson asks Pemberton to evacuate the city, but Pemberton is receiving confidential orders from Jefferson Davis not to do what Johnson tells him to do, which Johnson doesn't know Pemberton has. This is a tremendous mistake on the part of the Confederacy. The two generals are not cooperating because Jefferson Davis is telling one not to cooperate with the other. Battery B will fight at Vicksburg. It will attach to Blair's division, and it will be commanded by Barrett and First Lieutenant Israel P. Rumsey. Barrett is the picture on the left, and then Rumsey is the picture on the right. Battery B is posted at the northeast corner of the Vicksburg siege lines, 350 feet south of Park Tour Stop number 5. There are, as you can see, these iron tablets and monuments marking its position. Another picture showing the battery's position. And if we look at about where it says Stockade Redan attack, you can see the 5 of Tour Stop 5, and they were about 350 feet south of that position. So they bombard Vicksburg. They expend 200 rounds on May 18th. May 20th, firing is done in fixed intervals, 10 minutes of firing, 20 minutes of rest. The Confederates shoot back. 2 battery members were mortally wounded. On May 19th, Grant launches an assault, which fails. Battery B support that. They will lose 1 man killed and 1 man wounded on the 20th, on May 21st. They will fire during a part of the day as well. One of the Kenosha boys is killed on May 20th. DK Newell. He's bit by something. He's one of the 2 guys killed. He enlisted without the consent of his father, who was not written to him. He was a real good boy. His death is a sad one. That's Douglas Newell seated on the left. This is a cannon vent thumb guard of the type he was using when he was killed. Battery B fires at night at 3 a.m. on the 22nd. They're 400 yards from the enemy. And again, 2 attacks are launched by Grant, and they fail, and he loses 1 man killed. Picture of night artillery firing. This is the picture of the siege of Vicksburg, and Battery B would be up at the sort of northeast corner there of their position. The May 22nd assault fails as well, and both sides begin to dig in for the siege. Pemberton is determined to hold out as long as possible, hoping for relief. And basically, Barrett's report for the siege of Vicksburg is they expended 1,400 rounds of ammunition, fixed ammunition, 2 men killed, 1 wounded, and 3 horses disabled. This is what fixed ammunition is. It's a spherical solid shot attached with iron bands to a sabot, which in turn has a powder charge attached to it. So instead of loading the powder charge and the cannonball separately, they load them both at the same time, similar to a modern artillery piece. And directly across the river from and above Vicksburg is a place called Young's Point. You can see it on the map just to the right of the word that says Richmond in the center of the picture. And it's a little known fact that a Texas brigade moves against Young's Point, trying to break through to relieve Richmond. The brigade at 1400 left Richmond south of Tallulah, Mississippi. Because the brigade does not have any reconnaissance, they consume 17 hours to march 11 miles, and they arrive exhausted in Young's Point at about 10:30 a.m. Hawes is shocked that his command walked down onto open fields of a level plain in full view of the federal camp situated below Young's Point, some 1.5 miles away. As they advance across the field, federal reinforcements arrive. At that point, Hawes orders his troops to retire. Confederate efforts at Young's Point ended in failure. This is Young's Point today, marked by the blue marker you see next to the Vicksburg airport. The river has changed course. And Battery B fires 378 rounds of ammunition at the Battle of Young's Point. It's the inability of the Confederates to destroy the vital Union supply depot at Young's Point contributes to the ultimate surrender of the city. Grant and Pemberton will negotiate at this spot the rebel surrender on July 4th, 1863. And after that, Howard Cushing recuperates from a bout with recurring TB in the shell-shocked home of his cousin, Lawrence Houghton, who is the nephew of Milton Cushing Sr., who Milton had stayed with in Vicksburg before his death. Even though Howard has been bombarding this guy's house, family looks after family, even in the Civil War. Well, on the same July 3rd, Alonzo Cushing is killed at Gettysburg. Will Cushing offers to command Alonzo's Battery A. He proceeds to the field. 30,000 wounded men and thousands of unburied dead lay on the earth. My brother's battery was destroyed. All the officers and most of the men were shot, and 70 horses are dead. As William Cushing says on Alonzo's death, the wounds were not alone for those who fell upon the field. Their suffering greater than the dying know, the prolonged anguish of those left behind to mourn them. These are pictures of Alonzo's grave at West Point. That's Will Cushing on the right. However, Howard beats him to it. He sends a letter to Secretary of War Stanton saying, my brother Alonzo fell at the Battle of Gettysburg. I now most respectfully apply for commission in the same regiment and an appointment to the same battery in order to honor my brother Alonzo. The battery commander Rumsey recommends Howard. He has given good proof of his bravery and courage and intelligence. His moral character is unexceptional. Will honor memory of a noble soldier who bravely died for his country. And Abe Lincoln himself seconds the idea. He writes a letter to Stanton saying, I know not whether this can be consistently done, but the case seems to be a meritorious one. This takes some time because he's being asked to be promoted from private to lieutenant and transferred from the state service to regular service. Howard will be discharged from the battery. This is a list of battery members, and you can see Howard sort of in the middle there. He was discharged November 30th, 1863 for promotion. And this is his discharge certificate. I found this at the Chicago Public Library. Howard B. Cushing, listed on the 24th day of March, 1862. And he's discharged for promotion November 3rd, 30th day of November, 1863. And so he is commissioned as second lieutenant in the regular U.S. Army. He's assigned to Battery A, the U.S. 4th Artillery. The battery itself was established in 1821. It fights in Indian and Mexican wars. At the time of the Civil War, it was actually stationed in the Utah territory. This is Battery A at Culpeper, Virginia, at some point in the war. And Howard receives a remembrance of Alonzo. Corporal Cannoneer Thomas Moon had given Lon's blood-stained shoulder straps to Howard when Howard joined Battery A, and Howard put them on his uniform. Battery A is commanded by Lieutenant Rufus King, Jr. He gets a direct commission in the regular U.S. Army, serves in the Army of the Potomac throughout the war, and we will meet him later. These are the officers of the U.S. Horse Artillery, September 1863. Rufus King is in the center, directly behind the breech of the cannon. He has combat experience. He's been awarded 1 brevet promotion for taking command of 2 combined batteries at the Battle of White Oak Swamp. And this is Battery at Antietam. King is standing on the far left next to Alonzo, who's in the center looking directly at the camera. King has a distinguished lineage. His grandfather was Rufus King, was one of the signers of the United States Constitution. His father is Rufus King, Jr. He's a graduate of the U.S. Military Academy. That's him on the left. Rufus King has a Milwaukee connection because he lived in Wisconsin and in Milwaukee. He's a member of the 1848 Wisconsin Constitutional Convention, part owner of the Milwaukee Sentinel, superintendent of schools, regent of UW Madison, also organized and played in the first 3 baseball games ever played in the state of Wisconsin on what is now the Marquette University campus. And so Battery A will be assigned to the Horse Artillery. Horse Artillery is a little bit differently. It's company strength batteries from the regular Army's 5 artillery regiments. They're commanded by the Cavalry Corps. They differ in that each member of the unit travels on his own horse, rather than the traditional light artillery practice of some riding horses. Some rode on the limbers and caissons, and others travel on foot. If every man has his horse, they can move a lot faster. This is the U.S. Horse Artillery. As you can see, everybody's on a horse. And Battery A has 4 12-pound Napoleon guns. This is the Horse Artillery table of equipment. 12 batteries, 16 Napoleons, 46 3-inch guns, about 1,700 men, and they're organized into 2 brigades. Battery A is assigned to General David McMurtry Gregg's 2nd Division. That's him on the left, and that's him seated on the right. And there are actually 2 Greggs in Gregg's division. His cousin John Gregg is brigade commanding officer. The other 2nd Division brigade commanding officer is Henry Eugene Davies, one of the few non-professional soldiers in the Union Cavalry in the Eastern Theater of the Civil War. This is Battery A, February 1864, Culpeper, Virginia. And so Sheridan will begin his famous raid during the Overland Campaign. Meade quarrels with Sheridan. Sheridan told Meade he could whip Stuart if Meade let him. Grant says he generally knows what he is talking about. Let him start right out and do it. So Meade allows Sheridan to proceed against the enemy's cavalry from May 9th through May 24th, and sends him on a raid directly towards Richmond. The U.S. Horse Artillery 1st Brigade accompanies Sheridan's raid. 10,000 troopers in a column, which at time is 13 miles long. They destroy the Confederate forward supply base at Beaver Dam Station. This is a map of the campaign. You can see they start out, and then they'll move south over the North Anna River, various other rivers, and end up at the Battle of Yellow Tavern, just north of Richmond. They'll then break out, move across to the east, and then comes back through Gaines Mills, Cold Harbor, to the James River at Malvern Hill. All names we've heard before in previous battles in the Civil War. So Battery A will fight at Todd's Tavern on May 7th and 8th. On May 7th, the two opposing cavalries meet at Todd's Tavern at 4 p.m. They fight that until nightfall. They resume the next morning. The Confederates are pushed back upon Spotsylvania until Lee's infantry arrived across a bridge Sheridan had ordered his cavalry to destroy. The infantry secure the area for the Confederacy. Let's see. Both our brigades were hotly engaged. Were all dismounted and fought on foot. Battery A loses 2 men wounded on May 7th. And this is the oddest named Confederate battle. It's the Battle of Ground Squirrel Church. That's Ground Squirrel Church on the left, and the Union will be fighting James B. Gordon of the Confederate States of America on the right. This is a diagram of it. Gordon comes in and attacks the rear of the Union column, while Sheridan is at the other end fighting at the Battle of Yellow Tavern. And at the Battle of Ground Squirrel Church, Gregg's report, our division marching in the rear is attacked by Gordon's brigade of rebel cavalry. The attacks were repeated during the entire day. Without difficulty, were able to drive the enemy at all points. The other end of the 13-mile long column, Stuart's cavalry is fighting Jeb Stuart at the Battle of Yellow Tavern, which of course will result in Stuart's death. Stuart forms his line in 2 wings on each side of the Telegraph Road. This is a diagram of the battle. You can see the Telegraph Road there. You can see on the left-hand diagram on the left side, Gregg's division is bringing up the rear as Merritt's division move forward. They will attack across a creek and drive Stuart's forces from their position. So the enemy formed his line a few hundred yards to the east, inflating it with his artillery fire, making Yellow Tavern a hot place. Battery A, along with the rest of the Union artillery, poured round after round into the rebel lines. Sheridan will advance from Yellow Tavern to Meadow Bridge. You can see it on the diagram here just above where it says Mechanicsville. They advanced in the direction of the capital of Richmond, caught in the narrow area between the fortifications of Richmond and the rain-swollen Chickahominy River. They're subjected to artillery fire. So this is the Battle of Meadow Bridge. You can see on the lower part of the diagram, those are the outer workings of the Richmond defenses. Sheridan is actually caught in a trap here. He's got Gordon's cavalry behind him. The of the river. So he's sort of caught in a 3-sided barrier. He doesn't really have a lot of places to go. And so he sends in Custer to cross the bridge on the river. This is a railroad bridge over the Chickahominy River at where Meadow Bridge was today. So the 2 brigades guard the center of the Union line. Gregg had to resist the advances of Gordon's brigade, and Wilson has to oppose any Confederate advances along the Meadow Bridge Road. And just as a matter of knowing the South still remembers, the pilot of aircraft N500Y calls Richmond ATC, air traffic control, a few years ago and says, 5,000 Yankee, 20 miles north of Richmond. And Richmond air traffic control responds, oh no, not again. Anyways, Battery A deploys. Gregg posts Rufus King's battery. They rake the head of Gordon's column as it turns east onto the road. Gregg says, the enemy moved boldly against our lines despite the well-directed fire of 2 of our batteries, one of which is Battery A. Battery A will drive off the rebel cannon and get into a artillery duel with some Confederate artillery, but eventually King finally got the upper hand and forces back the rebel guns. horse artillery stops the rebels, made sure the Confederate infantry who is supporting Gordon's column do not advance, and Battery A will lose 1 man wounded and 4 horses killed. Battle of Middle Bridge ends, carrying Custer's troops across the damaged railroad bridge, hopping from railroad tie to railroad tie while being fired upon. They managed to clear the north bank of the Chickahominy. They gain a foothold. Custer's men then pin down the remaining enemy and, supported by artillery fire, flank the bridge to provide safe passage for large numbers of men and horses. Merritt's entire division crosses, engages the on Richmond's cavalry is trap. Again, they will move across the river there at Meadows Bridge and then move south to Malvern Hill on the James River. And then they will also, Battery A will also fight at the Battle of Hawes Shop or Enon Church. Hampton's troops encountered Gregg's Union cavalry. By this time, even the cavalry is fighting predominantly dismounted and utilizes earthworks for protection. Neither side achieved an advantage. This is the Battle of Hawes Shop, Enon Church. You can see Hawes Shop there to the right, Enon Church to the left, and they're fighting Wade Hampton's cavalry. The 2nd Cavalry drives back the Union pickets. Hampton feeds in green troops. The Confederates carried Enfield rifles, which had superior ranges to the carbines. 2 batteries of Union horse artillery set up just west of the Haw House. That would be Battery A. Gregg launches an attack that fails. They thwart a flanking attempt by Hampton. Custer arrives at 4 p.m. They dismount. He deploys them in a long double-rank line. He inspires his men by staying mounted as he leads them forward, waving his hat in full view of the enemy while his brigade band plays Yankee Doodle. Custer's horse, the 7th of the war, shot out from under him. This is a diagram of the battle. You can see where it says Oak Grove. That's where the Union artillery is positioned. That's where Battery A would have been. The rebels eventually withdraw. John Huff, the man who killed Stewart at Yellow Tavern, was himself killed at the Battle of Hawes Shop. And Battery A's war is over. Reaches Harrison's Landing and is dismounted. It's sent the next day to Washington, equipped as a light battery, and remains in the defenses of Washington from that time until the close of the war. However, it may or may not have been participated in the Battle of Fort Stevens. This is the famous incident where Lincoln goes to Fort Stevens, which is on the outskirts of Washington, to watch Jubal Early's troops attack. This occurs on July 12, 1864. As you may recall, the man standing next to Lincoln is shot down. They're briefly under enemy fire that wounded a Union surgeon. Lincoln is brusquely ordered to take cover by a whole lot of people will claim to have done this. This is a picture of Fort Stevens today. It's surrounded by a suburban neighborhood. One count of the Cushing family says that Battery A assisted in manhandling the 300-pound Parrott guns you saw in the previous picture. However, another historian says it's highly unlikely that men so familiar with light artillery would be called on to handle such heavy weapons. So it may or may not have happened. Howard, in the meantime, will be assigned to the Elmira, New York POW camp. He will be in charge of the camp. He will be there for 10 months later. It's only a short distance from Fredonia. One occasion, after one of the officers had been jeered and scoffed at, Cushing had the prisoners assembled and talks to them in no uncertain terms. This is a picture of the camp. The Confederates are complaining they probably should have ended up in Andersonville. It actually looks pretty neat and orderly. Everybody's at least got a tent. This is a diagram of it. You're going to see then the pond, the walls, and the encampment where the prisoners are kept. Howard reveals his true feelings. See here, you, expletive deleted. I am just up from the front where I've been killing such infernal wretches as you are. I have met you in 20 battles. I have never lost a gun to you. You never drove a battery I served with from its position. You are a crowd of insolent, cowardly scoundrels, and if I had command of this prison, I would discipline you or kill you, and I should much prefer to kill you. I would be glad to dam the river with your worthless carcasses and silence your insolent tongues forever. I fully understand that you are presuming upon your position as prisoners when you talk to me as you have, but you have reached the end of your rope with me. I will kill the first man who again speaks insultingly to me while I am in this pen, and I shall be here daily. So don't keep it inside, Howard. Tell us what you really think. In the meantime, shortly after this, Captain Evan Thomas is in the Georgetown jail. Captain Evan Thomas had commanded batteries A and C at Antietam. This is a marker showing that position. And Howard tries to free Thomas from the Georgetown jail, November 8th, 1865. They falsely represented themselves as members of the Provost Marshal. They obtained 16 men from Fort Whipple, stand them in front of the jail. They're apparently attempting to intimidate the jailers. Basically, Howard and the other officers involved are all drunk. The police do not release Evan Thomas. And as a result, Howard undergoes a court-martial March 1st, 1866. Howard tries to kind of weasel out of it. He says he's obeying the orders of Rufus King. King testifies that he did not order Cushing to return to Fort Whipple. His statement was a request and not an order. Maybe Cushing misunderstood him. The court found it impossible to believe that Cushing did not know of King's unlawful intentions. So he's found guilty of 2 of 4 specifications. He's sentenced to be suspended without rank or pay for 12 months. He gets no support from his family. Milton writes to his mother, I see Howard has been in some drunken scrape and is court-martialed. I hope he will not be dismissed, as I do not know what he will do. I will do no more on his behalf, and you better let him understand that you will not. The Cushings practice tough love. Howard then will arrange a transfer with another officer to the 3rd Cavalry as a first lieutenant, September 7th, 1867. The 3rd Cavalry is transferred back to the West after the Civil War. We were transferred to campaign in New Mexico against the various Indian tribes, particularly the Apache Indians. By February of 1870, most of the companies begin moving individually to the Arizona Territory. The 3rd Cavalry will move to Arizona to fight these guys, particularly the man standing on the far right, who we will meet later. Howard is assigned to Troop F, 3rd Cavalry, July 21st, 1868. He has a 1st lieutenant, 2nd lieutenant, 2 sergeants, 7 corporals, 1 bugler, 2 blacksmiths, 1 artificer, and 52 privates. Troop F is assigned to Fort Stanton, New Mexico in 1869. And Howard, as part of his patrol area, will routinely cross the Jornada del Muerto, the Journey of Death, which is the site of the World War II Trinity atomic bomb test site. Howard will fight the Apaches in the Guadalupe Mountains on Christmas Day, 1869. Merry Christmas. After a match of 130 miles, he attacked the same Indians in the Guadalupe Mountains, and the Indians fled from his unexpected attack. This is one of an Indian Apache, it's called a wiki-up, what one of their shelters would have looked like. Little did Howard know that in Arizona, an Apache, on learning of this attack, vowed to atone for this assault. They are then assigned to Camp Grant, Arizona in 1870. It was recognized from the tidewaters of the Hudson to those of the Columbia as the most godforsaken post of those supposed to be included in the congressional appropriations. And John G. Burke is appointed Cushing's second in command. Burke was born in Philadelphia to Irish immigrant parents. At 16, he ran away, lied about his age, enlisted in the 15th Pennsylvania Volunteer Cavalry, receives a Medal of Honor for gallantry in action at Stones River, saw action at the Battle of Chickamauga, and so he is appointed to the U.S. Military Academy. He graduates and is assigned as a 2nd lieutenant in the 3rd U.S. Cavalry. Burke describes Howard in a book. It's about 5'7", spare, sinewy, keen gray or bluish eyes, which looked through you when he spoke. Description of William Cushing is his eye was peculiarly piercing, very direct. He seemed to be looking through the man he was talking with. Howard becomes a great Indian fighter. He had killed more Apaches than anyone else. No man so relentless or successful in pursuit of the elusive and deadly Indians as Howard Cushing. Cushing will almost die in a flash flood, July 22nd, 1870. The Apaches are not the only danger. He was swept away by the torrent and would have been drowned if not saved by 2 of his men. This is what a flash flood in Arizona Canyon looks like. Troop F becomes an independent command. Cavalry troops are usually assigned a given patrol sector, and Troop F doesn't do that. They can go anywhere they want and do anything they want. So Cushing's Troop F is assigned to Fort Lowell at Tucson in 1870. This is what's left of Fort Lowell. And Cushing will go out on patrol April 26, 1871 with Sergeant John Mott, 15 privates, and a civilian packer. And waiting for him, who is waiting for him, and Geronimo as well, who is a leader of the Janeros group of the Nandini band of the Chiricahua Apaches. He is close to the famous chief Geronimo. They grew up together. This is who on the left. He is said to resemble his son, Asa Daklugi, on the right. He's described as being a very large man. He's over 6 feet tall, 225 pounds. He's a natural leader, but he's a stutterer. And Geronimo, who knows him well, will often act as a conduit for his words. Cushing becomes a focus of whose attention. At the time, it was thought that Cochise was responsible for planning and execution of the battle, but a description of the Apache leader, he was a very tall, large man who didn't speak much, matches who. Geronimo is who's second in command. His Mescalero Chiricahua name actually means the one who yawns. He, of course, is a famous leader of the Apache Indians. Geronimo is a name given to him by Mexican soldiers. These are the Apaches. And so Howard is searching for them. He decides to move on to Bear Springs. He finds Indian tracks north of Wallen, Arizona, and a sergeant and 3 privates were sent to investigate, while Cushing continues on with the rest of the force. He finds them near the Whetstone Mountains. These are the Whetstone Mountains, today part of the Coronado National Forest. You'll notice on the map, south or below the Whetstone Mountains, there's the Rain Valley, and below that, there's the Mustang Mountains, and we'll see that in the next few minutes. Sergeant Mott follows a suspicious trail. It's suspicious because the Apache woman in question is not making any effort to avoid leaving a trail. He becomes convinced they were being led into a trap. They move down the Rain Valley with the pack train, the gap between the 2 mountain ranges. This is the Rain Valley. You can see the Mustang Mountains in the background with this distinctively shaped peak. The Whetstone Mountains would be behind us. Again, we're looking south toward the Mustang Mountains and that distinctive peak. And the Apaches ambush them. Mott gets out of the deep wash because he believes they're being lured into a trap. He sees 15 Indians in a side ravine ready to cut them off. Sends someone back to get Cushing. More Indians then appear, attempt to get behind them. One of the troopers is wounded. Today, the Arroyo drops 152 feet from its inception to its end in a gravel pit. It's about a half mile from the southern end of the Whetstone Mountains and about half a mile from the Mustang Mountains. This is the Arroyo in question. You can see that distinctively shaped peak of the Mustang Mountains to the right. Howard attacks. Drives the Apaches back, kills 5 of them, sends most of the men back to guard the pack train. Against advice, he orders an advance across an open area against the Indians. Packer is shot through the head, and the Apache then rush out from behind cover and rush the cavalrymen. They apparently outnumber the cavalrymen 15-1. Mott questioned attacking with only 8 men. Howard said 8 men, that ought to be enough. Cushing's about 15 feet behind Mott when he says, Sergeant, I am killed. Take me out, take me out. Sees him clasp his hand to his chest and fall face forward. They seize Cushing. They begin carrying him toward their horses. After they've gone only a few steps, Cushing is mortally shot through the head from behind, and it comes out his right eye. They drop his body. They fire at the oncoming horses, Apaches. There's a running battle of over miles. The Apache leave cover to pursue. Eventually, the Apaches break off, and the men ride into Camp Crittenden at 1 a.m. Patrol lost Cushing, Packer Simpson, and Private Martin Green. They believe they killed about 13 Apache. Been a heavy loss among the Indians that could be suspected from the signs of bodies have been dragged to certain points, and they're apparently put on ponyback. Burke will mourn Cushing. Southern Arizona owe much to the gallant officers who wore out strength and freely risked life and limb in her defense. About Cushing, a book might well be written. Actually, a book was written. Burke serves up Howard Cushing. He said Cushing was the bravest man he ever saw. I mean just that, the bravest man I ever saw. Troop F will bury its dead where they fall. The Apache has set fire to the grass, so the bodies and all their possessions are burned in the grass fire. Geronimo is seen wearing Cushing's shirt at a famous peace meeting a few months later, and that shirt apparently has Alonzo's shoulder straps on it. So, like brother, Alonzo's and Howard's graves described. Alonzo's grave was sadly neglected at West Point, and Burke said, when I saw it, a tumble-down, worm-eaten board to mark his grave. Howard's body is moved several times. Every time the Army abandons a post, it's dug up and moved again. It's finally removed to their final resting place at the Presidio in San Francisco National Cemetery. In this graveyard, Officer Section 3, Plot 48, in this grave. The F next to HB stands for Troop F. So, aftermath and memorials, I am getting to the end. I'm sorry if I'm going over time and you want me to stop talking, just let me know. This is their memorial of the Cushing family in Fredonia. Several of them are buried there. Alonzo and Howard are related to Houston Texan NFL linebacker Brian Cushing. They are his great uncles. He is a descendant of Mary Isabel Cushing, their sister. He is the only living descendant. None of the Cushing men had children. And when we talk about Fredonia, New York, well, another Fredonia is established in the 1933 Marx Brothers movie Duck Soup. They clash. The city fathers wrote to the studio and asked them to remove all references to Fredonia because it's hurting our town's image. And Groucho Marx replies that asked them to change the name of their town because it's hurting our picture. The bridge wars mean that the downtown Milwaukee bridges do not align. If you have any reason why you're in downtown Milwaukee and you notice why the bridges don't line up, that's why. This is the Illinois Light Artillery Monument in Rose Hill Cemetery, Chicago. Taylor's Battery is actually remembered in perpetuity. William T. Shepard sets up a trust fund to ensure that the monument was decorated with plants and flowers each Memorial Day. This is the Battery A Memorial. As with Taylor's grave in Evanston, Illinois, Taylor's Battery lives on in a Chicago reenactment group, which I gave this presentation to. Rufus King will be awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions at White Oak Swamp. He will die in 1900. Rufus King High School in Milwaukee will be founded in 1934. It is named for his father. My father attended it in 1938. Battery A, 4th U.S. Artillery still exists. It is now Air Defense Artillery Battery, deploys what's called the THAAD. It's now Battery Alpha. THAAD is a high-level anti-ballistic missile interception weapon. And this is one of them being fired. Battery A itself lives on. Cushing's Battery Reenactor Group. The Helmira prison camp is still remembered. This is the 3rd Cavalry. We'll fight with TR on San Juan Hill. That's the 3rd Cavalry on the left of the picture. The 3rd Cavalry will be the first guardians of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier until 1941. 3rd Cavalry Scout will be the first to enter Germany in World War II. And they will fight in both Iraq wars and Afghanistan. John Burke is a man of principle. He turns down a retroactive promotion to major because he believes other men were not properly honored. And he will write a series of books about his experiences on the border. I would recommend both of them, especially on the border with Crook. And now we come to the interesting part. About the same time Howard is being killed, a young man named Edgar Rice Burroughs is born in Oak Park, Illinois. And Burke and Edgar Rice Burroughs may have met at the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893. Burroughs will also serve in the cavalry at Camp Grant, Arizona. in 1870, he will hear a lot of stories about Howard Cushing, who would have been very famous in those days if he has been somewhat forgotten today. Burroughs will eventually start writing Apache-themed adventure novels, and he will make extensive use of John Burke's books on the Apache in writing his 2 novels. I remember in those days, science fiction was about the science, not the fiction. Burroughs writes science fiction novels that are about fiction. These are called the Martian novels, in which we're in both the future and the past. We have guys with spaceships and laser pistols who are fighting monsters to save princesses from evil empires. Does any of this sound vaguely familiar? He will write 11 of these novels starring his action-adventure hero, John Carter. Burroughs will borrow from John Burke's books. One of them is, Burke mentions certain sacred caves the Apache have, and John Carter will enter a strange cave and then be somehow magically transported to Mars. Howard Cushing inspires Edgar Rice Burroughs. People who studied his writings realize that many of the details sound suspiciously similar to Erb's portrayal of John Carter in Arizona. They're both cavalrymen. They both had Apache fights, both fought in the Civil War. John Carter finds valuable minerals. Cushing and Troop F find valuable minerals. And of course, both of them are recklessly brave. Howard is a guy who can say, 8 men, that's enough to storm 100 Apaches. Cushing is impulsive, times to the point of recklessness. Or they even have the same eyes. Remember Burke's description of Howard? Keen gray or bluish gray eyes, which looked through you when he spoke and gave a slight hint of the determination, coolness, and energy which made his name famous all over the southwestern border. The description in Edgar Rice Burroughs' books of John Carter's eyes is taken word for word from Burke's description of Howard Cushing. That's a pretty good indicator that Edgar Rice Burroughs bases his John Carter character on Howard Cushing. And they, in turn, inspire most of modern science fiction. This movie, released on John Carter, didn't do very well in 2012. Howard and John Carter inspired George Lucas in Star Wars. Lucas is very clear he was inspired by Edgar Rice Burroughs' work. And both he and this is a scriptwriter of The Empire Strikes Back, says that they were strongly influenced by the John Carter character. Lucas will draw from John Carter, Howard Cushing. Burroughs' series includes beasts called Banths or Banthos in Star Wars, Siths. Princess Leia's famous bikini is imagined as a throwback to the skimpy outfits worn by Burroughs' titular Princess of Mars. The Mars books include royalty called Jedaks and Jadaras, names that sound a lot like Jedi. And again, he's there to save the princess. Where have we seen this before? So when you see Luke Skywalker, you're actually looking at Howard Cushing. The 3rd Cavalry has a sci-fi movie connection too. In this famous scene from the movie, the tanks in this scene have the 3rd Cavalry insignia on the front. So George Lucas founds Lucasfilm in 1971. He creates Luke Skywalker. They move to the Letterman Digital and Media Arts Center. Not this Letterman. This Letterman, a Civil War hero. He's an American surgeon credited as being the originator of the modern methods for medical organizations in armies and battlefield medical management. And it's at the Presidio, only a short distance from Howard's grave. So Howard and Yoda have come together. The circle is complete. Howard and John Carter inspire many science fiction novels as well as movies. Ray Bradbury, Arthur C. Clarke, Robert Heinlein. And they inspire many scientists, including Carl Sagan. He always said that he was inspired by the John Carter novels. And inspires soldiers in Vietnam, said they could identify with Carter fighting in a war on another planet. Let's see. 5 of the men are awarded the Medal of Honor for the battle where Howard is killed. The Apache Wars will continue in the United States as late as 1924, They will continue in Mexico until 1931. Howard is remembered by Cushing Street in Tucson, Arizona. This is the Cushing Street Bar on Cushing Street. This is the dedication of the Delafield Memorial. This is Will Cushing's family. The woman in black is his widow. The two women in white are his daughters. The daughters will never marry. They will never have children. This is the monument today with the plaque on it. These are the three brothers together. There's also Cushing Elementary School in Delafield. I followed my Jedi training. They're gone, but they're not forgotten. And that's pretty much the end. So if you have any questions, maybe we can be unmuted. Sorry, I went a little over time. Can't help it. I just talked too much.
James, thank you for a very interesting presentation. If people want, Bill Bremer, can you unmute everybody? Are there questions for Jim?
I think they can unmute themselves.
I think you're right. Jim, what presentation are you working on next?
Well, right now I'm not working on any because I don't have any place to show them. I am thinking of working on one about German soldiers, immigrant German soldiers, who died in the Civil War, and they are commemorated by a memorial in downtown Milwaukee. Are you at all familiar with downtown Milwaukee?
Slightly.
Okay, there's a place down there called Turner Hall. Turner Hall is the headquarters of what was called the Turner Association. It's a turn-of-the-century German organization that believes in improving both the body and the mind. It's like a health club with a college extension course located inside. And you can take courses and you can work out. And there's a big memorial to these guys who died in the Civil War in this building that everyone seems to have forgotten. And if I can get the Kenosha Civil War Museum to agree to host it or let me present it, then I would probably do that.
Sounds good. If you do it, we'd be interested in hearing it too.
Okay.
Other questions or comments for Jim? Again, Jim, thanks for presenting to us.
Okay.
We look forward to seeing the group in a month on October 14th. The presentation will be the Admiral's Web, Billy Mitchell, and the Atlantic bombing test of 1921. Christopher Kolakowski, director of the Wisconsin Veterans Museum, will be the presenter. So again, thank you, Jim. Everybody, have a great weekend. Take care.